Okay, I've been reading Time to Think for some time, and I've been taking time to think, both to note my reading, type it up, and also to generate material. Here on page 134 are these wonderful 9 incisive questions, and these are questions which can be asked of individuals or of teams that are led by a person, a human. So here you are. I like these a lot. There are 9 of them. I'm going to go through them briefly, and they deserve more thorough attention, but hey, that's for you to think about in the context of your own circumstance. So number 1 of these is, what do you really think? That's such a simple question, but how often is that asked of people in the workplace? And more importantly, in a sense, how often is it answered authentically, directly, non-evasively, honestly? Because all of these questions depend on a positive enough set of circumstances and context where they are leading to meaningful responses. What do you really think? Oh, I think that's going to work great. Thinking, oh, I don't stand a chance. What do you really think? Oh, I think you're doing this all for yourself and you're going to take all the credit for it. When really you say, yeah, I think this is going to work fine. What does it take to get people, either individual or collectively, to tell the truth, to answer honestly? Well, it takes trust. It takes a long time sometimes. It takes a lot of hard work. So that when you ask people, what do you really think? They tell you meaningfully, usefully, what they really think, and that's useful. Number 2, all of these could have a lot more time on, but I'm going to go through them quickly. Number 2, if you were in my position, that of team leading, if you were in my position, what would you do that I am not doing? That is such a brave question. It's too brave for a lot of people in my experience. They just won't go near that because they say, oh, well, if I asked that question, they'd all give me a load of grief and they'd tell me what it is I'm capable of doing, what I do wrong. Well, yes, maybe that's what you need. If you were in my position, what would you do that I am not doing? At the very least, ask these questions of yourself, if you're prepared to be honest with yourself. And this isn't all about sticking pins in yourself. This is about saying, look, I want to do as good a job here as I can. I want to be effective for my own good, for your all good, whatever. I want to do a job here that's recognized and thought of as being worthwhile. So the question, if you were in my position, what would you do that I'm not doing, should be an invitation for people to say, okay, I'll tell you the truth. I would do less of this. I would do more of this. I do this in a different way. I would do these things that are not being done. Hey, you might get some really useful stuff, but you've got to be big enough if you ask the question to take what you get back and not be defensive about it. Number 3, what do we assume that probably limits everything we do? Nancy Kline in Time to Think extensively goes into limiting assumptions, things that we either know about or are just going on in our head that we're less clear about and we haven't consciously accessed, things that are going on that are limiting assumptions. So the question, what do we assume that probably limits everything we do, is about saying, what are the things that we put in the way of being as good as we can be here? Is it a lack of belief in our own abilities? Is it a feeling that the obstacles and difficulties are these things and that they're somehow going to be more significant than perhaps we need to see them as being? What are they? And do we ever talk about these things? Do we ever have an explicit conversation about the obstacles, barriers, and difficulties that lie behind everything we do and lie behind all the positions we take? And because if you're in a meeting and people are saying what appear to be negative things or doing, having conversations about problems, really they're saying, hey, this is in the way, we need to talk about it. So the question, what do we assume that probably limits everything we do, is important. Moving on, number 4. This is a question I like so much, and I've never, ever come across being asked for real in anything that, for instance, could be thought of as a performance appraisal or review. Number 4 is, at the end of your career in this organization, what do you want to say you have achieved here? I'll say that again because it's so important. At the end of your career in this organization, what do you want to say you have achieved here? I've never been asked that. I don't know of anyone who's ever asked that or gone near anything close to what this gets to. Because what this should get in a meaningful, positive conversation is insight, awareness, maybe confirmation, but probably new stuff that says, whoa, I didn't know You had that ambition here. Well, now I know that, I can do this. My concern is that a question such as, I'm going to say it again, at the end of your career in this organization, what do you want to say you have achieved here? Just doesn't get asked. It gets assumed, a limiting assumption. It gets maybe a fleeting thought. But do we care enough about individuals that we work with whom we work, to consider this question? And of course, it's true of us as well. We should ask this of ourselves. At the end of my career in this organization, what do I want to say I've achieved here? Good people want to achieve things. Let's find out what they are. Number 5, what needs to improve here that I haven't noticed? If you had to take the lead suddenly, what would you do differently? There's 2 parts to this question, but it's essentially around the first part. What needs to improve here that I haven't noticed? A brave question. A courageous question. And for that reason, I fear a question that will get asked too few times. What needs to improve here that I haven't noticed? If you ask the question, you might get answers to it you won't like. So, what needs to improve here that I haven't noticed? The temptation sometimes is then to react defensively, to come up with all the yes buts and you don't knows and let's just ask the question and see what we get. Let's show that we're capable enough, competent enough, credible enough, confident enough to take what we get when they ask the question, what needs to improve here that I haven't noticed? Because no manager can see everything everywhere. Different jobs being done by different people in different ways. People know and see things that no one else they work with does, their manager or otherwise. No manager is so aware of everything that goes on that they notice everything everywhere. It doesn't happen. So to ask that question, what needs to improve here that I haven't noticed, is a powerful question, because it invites people, an invitation they may or may not take, to say, well, okay, I'll tell you what you haven't noticed. It's this, and it's that, it's something else. Some of these things might appear trivial to you. They might not to them. Then the next part of it is, if you had to take the lead suddenly, what would you do differently? That gives you an idea of where people feel. So if they're prepared to engage in the question, they would do things in a different way than you do. As simple as that. Number 6, what are we not facing that needs to be worked on? What are we not facing that needs to be worked on? What are we dodging? What have we looked at and moved on from too quickly? What are we just pretending isn't in front of us? What are we not facing that needs to be worked on? Behind that are further questions like, are we brave enough to face the genuine reality of what's in front of us, or shall we just carry on pretending it's a bit different to that? What are we not facing that needs to be worked on? The final 3. I like this one a lot too. How would your work have to change to be exactly right for you? Number 7. How would your work have to change to be exactly right for you? Hey, that rather assumes, limiting assumption perhaps, that work for individuals, one at a time, isn't exactly right for them. If it is exactly right, the answer will be, well, nothing needs to change because everything's absolutely wonderful. If you get that answer, I think that's a false answer. Most people would like their work, the emphasis placed on certain tasks, the people with whom they work most closely or don't, to have a different balance, and to invite a discussion around how work would have to change to be exactly right for that person is a good conversation to have. It might be unreasonable for people to, for instance, answer, well, I want to be paid 5 days a week for 1 day's work. Not everything people might want in terms of the changes that they seek can be given them, but some could. And to have a conversation around the aspirations, the concerns, the frustrations, and also the ambitions of people is a good thing, because most work can change just a little here and there at the very least, so that it's more exactly right for each person. Number 8, if you were not holding back, what would you be doing? That's got an assumption built into it. If you were not holding back, what would you be doing? That rather assumes that everyone's holding back. And I think that's reasonable to assume, to be perfectly honest. Very few people give everything their all the time. in every situation. Usually people, for all sorts of reasons, are holding something back, either for fear of looking daft. Well, I'm holding back these ideas which I think other people would think are stupid, limiting assumption. Or I'm holding back because I don't see the point. Or I'm holding back because I've tried it twice already, and what's the point of coming up with any original idea around here? It doesn't get you anywhere. If you are not holding back, whatever that means, what would you be doing? Finally, number 9. What do we actually know now that we are going to find out about in a year? It might sound a bit odd. What do we actually know now that we are going to find out about in a year? So what are the things that, if we stopped, and that's not always something that happens often enough, come off this hamster wheel, what would we actually say, hey, this is important, this is something we need to work on now, this is stuff we can devote some time to right now, otherwise we're going to get to a point where things will happen during the course of the next few months, year or so, where we wish we'd worked on this now. And it's things we know. The things we know now. This is wonderful expression, isn't there, in knowledge management? If only we knew what we know. Well, if we stop every now and again for long enough, and we spend time to think, we can actually identify more things that we didn't know we knew. If only we knew what we know. A lot of learning and a lot of knowledge is tacit. We just know it. We don't think about it. We don't talk about it. We don't make it explicit. We don't write it down, whatever. But the answer to what do we actually know now that we are going to find out about in a year means let's bring forward the time that we would otherwise get insights that we can actually get right now. So that's the 9. I'm, as ever, putting myself out there. Let me know what you think. Contact me if you want to engage in any discussions or thoughts on this. And overall, and kind of most importantly, because this isn't done entirely only for my own benefit, it's for, I hope, the value of people out there that would find this useful. I hope you do indeed find this of value.